they liked me. Some of the heads of some very big companies took a liking to me, and they liked Blythe and Company. So life went on pretty well for me. In 1967, I met one of the officers of what was then the Dyson-Kistner Corporation. I had done some business with DKM on some acquisition opportunities, and they'd worked out quite well. And this vice president was in the Los Angeles office visiting with me, and he said, we'd like to have you leave Blythe and Company, where I was a VP, and join us. And I was very, very happy with Blythe. I was scheduled to be transferred back to New York with Blythe. And it was a tough decision, but turned out to be the best move I ever made, because I was offered a very, very significant increase in salary, plus $1 million bonus, and that got my attention. But I'd worked with Charlie and Frank on a number of deals prior to this time, and it was a temptation that I just couldn't turn down, in spite of how much I enjoyed working with Blythe and Company. So I moved back to New York with them in 1967. DKM is a very, very private organization. Charlie did not want any of us to talk to business publications about what we were doing. Business Week would call, other Wall Street Journal. He didn't like the idea of having a tombstone ad. I don't know how many of you know what a tombstone ad, but it would say, let's say, Merrill Lynch assisted the Dyson-Kistner Corporation in buying such and such company. He didn't like that at all. He didn't want our name known and what we were doing and who we were buying or whatever. So we sort of grew up in an atmosphere of low-keyed. How can I put it? Well, maybe I can describe it best. We had a beautiful office, 2 floors in 230 Park Avenue, and we had this decorator that everything was very traditional, and the decorator had called the decor and the furnishings quiet money. And I think that was the reputation that Charlie wanted to keep. We never did anything illegal. We were very careful about that. I've had some interesting experiences, including challenging. We were a very big stockholder in a company called Household International. It was a finance company and other businesses that we sold a company to, and we had a dispute about a poison pill. The first poison pill that was ever put into effect by a company was with Household International. I don't know how many of you know what a poison pill is, but it's where somebody acquires over a certain number percent of a company. There are things that happen that make it almost impossible to really buy any more shares. That was a case that went all the way to the Delaware Supreme Court, where we lost. Delaware is full of, their courts are full of lawyers, and Delaware is a great state to operate in for a corporation. I'm going to talk a little bit about DKM, and then I'm going to open it to questions. I mentioned to Spence that I'd be happy to say a few words, but I think you'll gain more about what I might be able to respond to your questions and my just talking along about what DKM did. Although it was a very successful company, I think the Forbes magazine, I believe sometime in the 80s, said, it was an article on how Charlie was very upset about this, but they reported that he was the leader in the leverage buyout. First person to really create what was known as a leverage buyout. By that I mean using leverage to buy a company with a minimum of equity. And they also reported, according to them, that we were one of the largest privately owned companies in America. But we probably acquired something like 200 companies over a period of 40 years, although we had looked at probably 2,000. We're very selective about what we bought, and as we grew, we diversified more from industrial manufacturing into retailing, other types of businesses. Give you an idea of the diversity. We manufactured farm equipment. We manufactured, another company manufactured industrial gears, plumbing fixtures. I don't know how many of you remember Elger, but that was a name that was quite well known a number of years ago. We owned that company. We manufactured diesel engine components for trucks and for railroads. We had a company that produced leather for furniture and the automobile industry, seat covers. We had a company that produced auto and truck parts. We had another business that operated in 25 countries that recycled steel mill waste. We had an oil and gas company, primarily production in Texas, New Mexico, Louisiana area. We produced products for recreational vehicles like mobile homes, and then other camping equipment for toilet facilities for camping equipment. We had a company called DKM Broadcasting. We owned 9 radio stations around the country. We owned a casualty insurance company, pretty good sized insurance business. I mentioned we had an oil and gas business. We had a big tire distribution company that operated in the Southwest and had a exclusive on Michelin tires at the time, which was a very nice business. We owned a company called Garrett Freight Lines. I don't know whether some of you remember Garrett, but it was headquartered in Pocatello, Idaho. We bought that company. We were in the banking business, Spence. We owned controlling interest in a bank in Florida, Savings and Loan Association. Had about 47 offices, and I was a chairman of a bank, at one time. So, I'm going to just close now and open this up for questions, but I think the important thing is if you don't be afraid to take chances. In order to accumulate wealth or be successful, there are risks that have to be taken, and generally the bigger the risk, the greater the return will be. And that was a philosophy that we had at DKM, and it worked out very well, and it worked out very well for me. I'm going to read something to you that I've felt that I've tried to follow this particular philosophy for a long time. And then I'm going to let you ask any questions, or you ask me to elaborate on some of the things we've done. It's called Keeping Our Balance. One of the circus acts which always fascinates an audience is the tightrope walker. We admire the ability of anyone who can keep life under control and keep dangerous extremes and opposing forces in balance. Some people go to such extremes that their judgment is impaired and they become ineffective and innocuous. Desirable as it is to keep on an even keel and avoid excesses, one need not go to the other extreme of doing nothing or maintaining neutrality. The tightrope walker can never just stand still. Like the bicycle rider, he must keep moving just to keep in balance. To keep a proper balance requires action, and if we would keep opposing forces in check, we must constantly adjust to circumstances. I will repeat that. We must constantly adjust to circumstances. Enough said. Questions?
Well, now that you've indicated your banking background and the shininess at the top of your head, you can qualify for a toupee, and I will get you.
Yeah? Well, don't get me one like the one you wear.
But I had a thumbtack in that, that blows off in the wind.
Yeah, but you're bleeding. Yes, sir.
With your history in finance, what led to your interest in eyes and the development of the Einstein group?
Well, I was an only child. I don't wear glasses. My vision is perfect. Randy Olson right here is here. We got a number of people from the Eye Center, important people from the Eye Center. I'm not that important. It's the people inside. But my mother was a fairly religious woman. She was from Tennessee and belonged to a church called the Church of Christ. But she used to read Bible stories to me at night when I was going to bed. You know, I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 years old. And these parables. And she read a parable to me one night that I've never forgotten. And that parable was about Christ coming into Jerusalem with his entourage, and there was a blind beggar that was sitting on the side of the road. And this blind beggar, in those days, of course, anyone was blind, the only way they were able to survive is to beg, because they were unemployable. But Christ heard him. The beggar had cried out, "Lord, can you help me?" And he went over to talk to him, which he did, and he put his hand on his head, and he said, "You shall see, my son," and he restored his vision. And I've always had a sympathy for anyone that's blind. Of all the 7 senses, blindness is the one I would least want to have been affected by. And so that story is something I never forgot. And I was on the National Advisory Board. It followed Spence. And Randy Olson made an appearance before the National Advisory Board one day, and he was talking about the need for consolidating the ophthalmologists on campus and the researchers on campus that were spread out all over the place. And that resonated with me. Randy is a very persuasive guy. And we talked about it, and he convinced me that this was something that I should